Anneliese Michel, a devout German girl, suffered seizures and terrifying hallucinations, which doctors labeled as epilepsy and schizophrenia. Now, believing she was possessed, her family sought a solution from the church. Anneliese endured 67 exorcisms over 10 months. She died in 1976 from malnutrition and sparked a controversial trial on faith versus medical neglect. Her case inspired the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Hello to all my fellow creepy little weirdos. My name is Christina and I'm a paranormal researcher working towards my master's degree in parapsychology, and I will be your tour guide through the realms of the unexplained, the paranormal, and the just plain weird. Welcome to Horror, History, and Hauntings. The air in Klingenberg, Germany hung thick with the scent of damp earth. The countryside caught in the grasp of another bleak autumn. Inside the Michel household, a young girl sat on the edge of her bed, her frame thin, her eyes shadowed and exhausted. Anneliese Michel had once been a vibrant, devout Catholic girl, with a gentle smile and a heart full of faith. She was a diligent student, excelling in her studies, and was known for her kindness and deep spirituality. She attended Mass regularly and even considered pursuing a life devout to religious service. Her friends described her as warm and compassionate, someone who found joy in helping others and upholding the traditions of her faith. But something had changed. Something dark had taken hold. It began in 1967 when she was just 16. The first episode came like a violent storm in the night. Her body stiffened, her limbs convulsed, and her consciousness slipped away into a terrifying abyss. When she awoke, she was gasping, drenched in sweat, and unable to move. The doctors called it epilepsy, prescribing medications meant to quell the seizures, but the darkness only deepened. Soon, the seizures were not the worst of her troubles. Whispers crept into her mind, hissing blasphemies and vile threats. Shadows slithered at the edges of her vision, their presence lingering in the corners of her room even when the lights were on. Her prayers brought no solace. Instead, they seemed to incite an unseen fury. Objects moved on their own, and a pressure, cold and suffocating, bore down on her chest when she tried to sleep. Her family, deeply religious, grew frantic. Doctors continued to insist that it was psychological. Schizophrenia, they said, or the worsening effects of epilepsy. But when they did tests, they couldn't find any evidence of that in her brain. But Anneliese knew the truth. She felt the presence of something inside her, something that hated the name of Christ, something that clawed at her soul with every prayer she uttered. By 1973, she refused to eat, claiming that demons inside her would not allow it. Her once soft voice grew guttural, monstrous, spewing words in ancient tongues she had never learned. She screamed for hours, her body contorting in ways unnatural for a human body. The scent of sulfur tainted the air when she was near. Her physical strength seemed to grow unnaturally. She could throw family members like her sister across the room with ease, despite her frail appearance. She developed an aversion to religious objects, recoiling violently at the sight of crucifixes and holy water. Her eyes, once warm and kind, took on an eerie, almost predatory glare. The demons inside her mocked those who tried to help, speaking in cruel, mocking tones, often in voices that seemed inhuman. Her parents could no longer ignore what they believed was a spiritual affliction. They turned to the church, pleading for an exorcism. Seeking permission for an exorcism was not a simple matter. The Catholic Church required thorough documentation and medical evaluations before granting approval. Father Ernest Alt, who had been closely observing Anneliese, was convinced she was possessed. He petitioned the local bishop, Bishop Joseph Stangl, presenting evidence of her disturbing behavior and the inexplicable phenomena. The church demanded that all medical options be exhausted first, requiring testimonies from the doctors and the psychiatrists who had treated her. Despite their recommendations of continued medical treatment, her case was deemed exceptional due to the sheer intensity of her symptoms and her own pleas for spiritual intervention. After reviewing the case and consulting church guidelines, Bishop Stangl authorized the exorcism under the 1614 Rituale Romanum, assigning Father Arnold Renez and Father Alt to perform the sacred rite. The 1614 which Rituale Romanum is an ancient Catholic text that outlines the official procedures for performing sacraments and religious rites, including exorcisms. Rooted in Latin prayers and strict instructions, it was designed to drive out demonic forces through a series of prayers, blessings, and the use of holy water and sacred relics. The rite required absolute faith, persistence, and adherence to the sacred text to expel the possessing entities. Over the next 10 months, Anneliese endured 67 exorcism sessions. The prayers, the holy water, the relentless Latin chants, none seemed to loosen the grip of the entities inside her. She named them Lucifer, Judas, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and more. Each voice distinct, each presence more malevolent than the last. They laughed at the priest, mocking the faith, and tortured the girl from within. She was forced to perform hundreds of genuflections, a practice of bending one knee to the ground in reverence or worship, sometimes dropping to her knees so violently that her joints swelled and eventually shattered under the pressure. Her body wasted away. Her lips cracked from dehydration. Her bones protruded from her once healthy frame. Her face became gaunt, her eyes hollow, her body barely able to sustain itself under the weight of the torment. The final days came in July of 1976. Weighing only 68 pounds, she lay on her bed, her breath shallow. Her last words, spoken in a voice no longer her own, were chilling. "I beg for absolution." Then silence. The Michel family was charged with negligent homicide. The priests were also accused of allowing her to die under the guise of religious duty. The trial that followed in 1978 became one of the most infamous courtroom battles between faith and science. Prosecutors argued that Anneliese had been denied medical treatment that could have saved her life, condemning her to a slow and painful death. The defense, led by the priests and her parents, insisted that they had only acted on her wishes, believing she was possessed and that an exorcism was her only hope. Evidence was presented, including chilling audio recordings of the exorcisms, in which Anneliese's voice twisted into something inhuman, speaking in multiple guttural tones at once. Witnesses described the horrors they had seen: her body unnaturally contorted, her refusal of food and water, her agonizing suffering. Yet the medical community stood firm. This was a case of untreated epilepsy and psychosis exasperated by religious hysteria. After months of legal battles, the court found Anneliese's parents and the two priests guilty of negligent homicide. However, their sentences were surprisingly lenient. 6 months in prison, later reduced to probation. The ruling left the world divided. To some, it was justice for a young woman failed by those who should have been protecting her. To others, it was an unjust condemnation of faith in the face of the unknown. Her story became the foundation for the Exorcism of Emily Rose, a film that blurred the line between faith and science, horror and truth. To this day, the recordings of her exorcism still exist, filled with unearthly voices and tormented screams, a chilling reminder of a girl caught between two worlds, one of medicine and reason, the other of faith and the unknown. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It would really mean the world to me. Also, you might also like this video about another haunted tale or this playlist on my channel. And as always, thank you for watching. Good night and sweet dreams.